Okay, it is 5 after, so let's get started. Welcome to the Network Service Mesh working group. We meet every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific. We also hold a weekly PR review, which occurs every Tuesday at 7:30 a.m. Pacific. We also participate in a couple of other groups, including the CNCF Cloud Native Network Function Working Group, which occurs every Monday at 1600 UTC, and the CNCF Tag Network, which occurs every first and third Thursday of every month. We have a couple of events coming up. The first one is KubeCon EU, which is occurring in just over a month from now. We have co-located Cloud Native Telco Day, which is going to be on the 16th. So we will have people talking about network service mesh there. We also have Open Source Summit North America coming up in Austin in June 21 through 24th. And currently KubeCon North America CFPs are open. So if you would like to speak at KubeCon North America, please get your CFP submitted now. With that, we have stats from the social media community team. We've added additional 2 followers and are following 16 additional people, and have put out 10 tweets on a variety of CNCF related topics. We also have reposted all of this to LinkedIn. With the agenda, we have NSM version 1.3, which the initial release was stated earlier, and we initially pushed it back to the 12th, and it looks like we've pushed it back again to the 14th to fix an important MTU issue. So is that still accurate? Are we releasing on Wednesday?
So that's subject to a little bit of discussion. So there were the initial raft of MTU fixes that went in yesterday. We're currently doing the long run for those fixes, and it looks like that will get the release out on the 14th. There was one dangling MTU issue about VLANs that I didn't know enough to decide whether or not this was the right fix or not for, and so sort of had tossed back over the line at Laszlo, at a time that was frankly the middle of the night for Laszlo. So he appears to have gotten right the hell on it when he woke up. And so that MTU fix is now available. We're currently 14 hours into the 24-hour long run that we do before releases. This fix looks mostly okay to me, but I have one outstanding question about it, which I think I had stuck in the issue and not in this. And that is, so Laszlo, I know you test the hell out of everything you do. Have you checked to make sure that in fact the L3 MTUs are set for the cases that you care about?
Yes. Hello. The L3 MTU is set at the initialization in VPP with the same set MTU function.
Got it.
And the only problem with this when someone already added this link to the VPP or created an AF packet and missed to set the MTU value. But that case is not covered by the original code. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. I know you're very thorough, but everyone misses something at some point, and it sounds like you're on top of this. So
Mhm.
I'm perfectly cool with this change. And that was sort of the first question up. The second question that I wanted to sort of dig into is, we're currently 14 or 15 hours into a 24-hour long run. And we typically like to see at least a 24-hour long run before we release. I don't think this actually, because it's just touching on the VLAN use case pieces, I don't think this is actually something we are testing in the long run. Is that correct, Denise?
Yep, I think VL3 sorry, I mean L3 M2 branch will not trigger by our testing. So probably we can somehow test it by something else.
Yeah, so I guess the point I was getting to is, I think that the existing long run that we're about 15 hours into remains valid, or as valid as it was to begin with, even if we merge this PR. And so I don't think we need to restart that long run, because it won't show us anything that we aren't already seeing if we merge this PR. And I just wanted to check and make sure that that actually matched everybody else's expectations.
I also think so. So sounds good.
Okay. And so if that's the case, then I think we continue with the current long run. And so we should still expect things to go out on the 14th, the release to go out on the 14th. And we'll just go ahead and merge this PR, and it will be part of the release that goes out on the 14th. It just won't be part of the long run that's currently ongoing, because it isn't exercised by the long run anyway. Is everyone okay with that?
No problem from my side.
Excellent. Does that sound reasonable to you, Laszlo? Did we lose Laszlo?
Either that or Laszlo's on mute.
Mute gets us all eventually.
It really does.
Okay. So if we miss,
Oh,
there you
sorry.
are, Laszlo.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay from my side.
Excellent. So let me go ahead and merge that. So it will work its way through during the long run, and then that will be in the release. I think we're still on track for the 14th then. Does that match your expectations, Denise, since you're the one actually doing the mechanics of the release?
Yep, I guess we can move a date for one day.
Well, I mean, we'd already decided we were moving it to the 14th, correct?
I think we can release it for 13.
Oh, okay. That's also acceptable. I know Jiang will be absolutely heartbroken to get the release one day earlier than promised. But we'll continue.
Absolutely.
So my recommendation would be to leave a little bit of wiggle room. If we get it out early, fantastic. Like, don't hesitate to do the release early, but set the deadline, keep the deadline as is, just to give yourself a little bit more room. Like, in other words, it also helps you with practicing self-care as well, to make sure that you're not burning yourself out over a deadline that everyone is expecting, because we moved it up.
Okay, that's also a really good point. But the net is, Denise is really good when he actually does get the release done, of announcing it on the Slack channel. And so, and I'll get the website stuff up immediately after that. And so as a result of that, I expect that we will see, as soon as the release goes out, we'll see notification of it. So if, as currently expected, it gets out a day early, you'll see that on the Slack channel. If something comes up, then we're still on for the 14th. Sound good to everyone?
Sounds good.
Excellent. I appreciate everyone's patience with this. And by the way, who is Zolug, the person who caught this MTU bug? Because that was a really good catch.
Hey, it's me, Zoltan Algoshi.
Okay, Sultan. Excellent. No, that was a very good catch. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for turning around testing the fixes so quickly. It must have been the middle of the night for you when you got up to test them, it's my guess, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for taking care of it on such a short notice as well.
Yeah, it's sometimes when you get into the minutia of networking, it's better if you've actually hurt yourself with MTUs a few times, which God knows I have.
Agree.
Or I was making, I presume you've all heard the joke, there are only two hard problems in computer science: cache coherence, naming things, and off by one errors. And someone was joking with me yesterday, there are only two hard problems in networking: MTUs and BGP. So, all right. So we discussed last week about the NSM, well, anything else on the NSM 1.3 release? Okay. Frederick, shall we move on to talking about the NSM 1.4 release?
Absolutely. So with that, with the 1.3 release imminent, we need to start talking about planning. So, or specifically with the dates. Now, as a heads up, these particular dates do coincide with KubeCon EU, as in KubeCon EU, if I recall, starts on May 16th, and that will be the telecom day. And then the release candidate will be on May 23rd, but the conference will be from 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20th. So we do have people here who are building on top of network service mesh who will have conflicts with those dates. So I want to highlight that as part of this, because that will indicate possible reduced capacity from, well, not possible, will be reduced capacity from those individuals. And so I want to make sure that's highlighted. With that though, what do people think of the current dates? So it doesn't sound like either there's no opposition or people have not had time to think about the possible impact, and I suspect it's probably the latter.
Well, we did discuss it last week, and part of the reason this is running a little bit of a shorter cycle than we have historically, and part of the reason was that there was a request to see if we could get the 1.4 release out. I think the original request was by June 6th, but I don't believe in actually scheduling for the dates that people need things, because that never actually works out correctly. And so I think we had suggested May 30th was a better choice.
Thank you for reminding me on that. That did happen. And so how about, so based on the previous discussions, let's keep it as is for now. At least that's my recommendation. And what we can, and what we'll do is we'll adjust the expectations of the release to match. So if there's anything that is considering it's a shorter release cycle, please do speak up about priorities if you've not done so already, as to which things are important to you, and that will help us determine what we should front load versus what we can put in the back to maximize your chance of getting the things that you want.
Cool. And so we had briefly raised this last time. Sorry. Anyway, so on the 1.4 release, there's something we brought up last time about what would need to happen to consider a more frequent release post 1.4. I think, Jiang, you had suggested that it would be nice if we could see our way clear to doing a release roughly every 30 days. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the problem with that right now is that we have 2 weeks for, between feature freeze and release candidate, between release candidate and release. And so, 30 days would be 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And so I sort of opened the floor to ideas like what we need to do in order to be able to get to more frequent releases post 1.4. And so I just wanted to sort of open the floor for folks who have ideas, because I'm not opposed to getting to faster releases. I'm naturally biased towards faster releases, but it does seem to me that having a release cycle where you spend half your time in sort of a test and bug fix cycle probably is going to retard progress greatly. So do folks have thoughts or ideas?
I'm just thinking like the thorough testing that we are doing before the release is not running frequently in the CI, right? Until the release. For example, the 24 hours long run is not run at all until we close the release. And we run only on top release candidate. Is that a correct understanding?
So your understanding is correct, and I think you're about to get to a very good point about how we could actually improve our ability to speed up the release. So 24-hour long run is definitely one. Another one that comes to mind is, I know that you're doing a whole bunch of internal testing, and I can tell because you keep finding interesting bugs that are obscure but important. I don't know how much of that is possible to move into the general CI or things that are representative of that.
Yeah, we also consider that, but that's a long-term plan. Like we also plan to contribute into testing as well, but it's just that at the moment we are a bit low in capacity. Now we need to define working on features and and also the testing.
That's completely fair. The other sense that I get is that there's a phase of testing where you have really good testers and they sit down and they just start beating on the stuff that comes to mind. And the kinds of bugs you're filing are the things that you get from those high quality testers. And once those testers have figured out the things to beat on, then you can look at bringing those into automated testing. But in that sort of first phase where you're primarily working from the creativity of really good testers, like you don't quite know until they start exploring the space that things occur to them, all the things you're going to want to test. Okay, so we may come back and revisit this again as we move forward. I think definitely at least thinking about how we might get the 24-hour long run to be a more regular thing is definitely likely to be very productive, and possibly even something longer.
Can I have a question?
Oh, please.
Does it mean that after 1.4, the next release will be 1.5, that we are planning to be closer to the 1.4 date? Is that correct? With the same content?
Same content or same timing?
I'm thinking about if the content of the release, the amount will be the same as nowadays for 60 days, or the content will be less for the next releases.
So I don't think we've made any concrete decisions on this about 1.5 yet. What I think we have is Zhang has sort of put up an aspiration about possibly making that go faster. And
yeah, but just in theory, If the content will be smaller than before, is that correct understanding?
If by content you mean the amount of sort of stuff being done in terms of features and whatnot, that's not entirely clear yet, because we haven't scoped out what we're doing. We haven't even fully scoped out what we're going to try and accomplish in 1.4, much less in 1.5. So the actual sort of feature content isn't actually entirely clear yet for those. Now, if we were talking about the timing, that's also not entirely determined, because NSM 1.4, we definitely have determined a timeline for. Part of the question in my mind about what we do post 1.4 sort of comes down to how does 1.4 go as a release? And then what other things we can do. Mostly this discussion is not sort of laying a stake in the ground and saying that things will or will not be this way in 1.5 and subsequent releases. It's more that Zhang had raised this as an aspiration. And I have personally a bias towards trying to get to faster release cycles. But to get to faster release cycles, we clearly can't utilize the same mechanics that we're doing right now for a longer release cycle in a reasonable way. Does that make sense? And so we're trying to think like, what can we do to make the mechanics of the process better so that we could, in principle, make it go faster? I don't think any decision's been made about whether it will be faster post 1.4 yet. But again, part of that's going to depend on how 1.4 goes. If it turns out that that's very comfortable, that's one thing. If it turns out that there are challenges to 1.4 because of the tight timing, then part of it's going to come down to, okay, so is it clear how to avoid those challenges in the future? Or is it hard to avoid those challenges in the future? There's just a lot of unknowns as we're trying to tighten the timing here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And just add to what Ed said, one of the reasons is that it also allows us to act faster in case of critical bugs and security fixes as well.
Yes,
so it's like
absolutely.
that we don't need to decide right now that we shorten the release cycle yet, but it's just more like give us a possibility to do so when we want to, especially when it comes to critical fixes.
Yeah, well, and you know, part of the other thing that we've sort of run into historically over time is even with that 2 weeks, we end up with very late breaking bugs. Now, I tend to be a positive person. I tend to be an optimist. So I look on that as, you know, this is wonderful. We've actually caught these bugs instead of shipping them. But it does mean that sort of like we do seem to need more time right now. And so we need to look at ways to to possibly catch these things sooner.
There's also a difference in bugs that are caught late. If we're catching bugs that are catastrophic, then we should spend the time to, we should slow down a little bit and spend the time to stabilize the system. But if the bugs are less critical as time moves forward, then that means that we're either doing the right set of things. If we're not catching any bugs, then either we're like amazing, world's best programmers, or we're not being aggressive enough in our feature set, one or the other. So I think it's a bit of a balance. We can use it as a barometer there.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that answered your question, Slard, but that was an attempt.
Also, from technical point of view, for 20-hour long site testing, we found that probably GitHub is not good for this, because empirically we found that limit of run is 6 hours. Probably I'm wrong, I did not test it so good, but we found that GitHub is stops after 6 hours of work.
Good to know. Good to know. That could present some challenges.
Also, probably we could consider about profiling testing. We can inject profiles, profiling into our application to get profile information for each build. Profile information can show, do we have any leaks? And then probably we can consider about I think we can have an alternative possible for 20-hour one. So probably profiling, one of the options that could track any new problems. And also we probably can consider about some stability tests that will load and SAM for 1 or 2 hours, and probably we can replace with this 20-hour long testing.
Okay, no, this is good. It sounds like there's some thought processes that are going, which is kind of the stage at which I think we are. in this discussion. I don't think we're really ready to make a decision, but we're ready to start thinking about what could be done and what are the challenges. So this is awesome. Cool.
So is there any more that we want to speak on this particular topic, or do we want to move on to the next one? Cool, let's move on to the next.
Cool. So I think there was a point brought up. I don't know if I don't suspect any progress has been made here. I just didn't want it to fall off the edge about the possibility of having GitHub's release node auto generate release notes for 1.4. So my guess is, because I think this was your suggestion, Denise, and you've been very busy since we've last brought this up. So we may not have made any progress thinking about this, but I just wanted to sort of make sure it didn't fall off the edge.
I guess we can consider it for 1.4 release. I think it should be not a big deal to add not auto generation.
Okay. Cool. So I think we also had a Spire issue we didn't consider critical, that we said we didn't need to get fixed for 1.3. And there's a pull request open to fix it. So we're still keeping an eye on it for 1.4. And then on IP policy, I think there were some more things that needed to be followed up for IP policy for 1.4. Is that correct, Lionel?
Yes, yes. Not sure if I will have time to work on this before 1.4, but yeah, I will try to.
Okay, that's fair. And then on the command forward OVS, I think we have a PR for 1.4 to try and bring those to a single image that you had done, Laszlo. We just didn't want to merge that before 1.3 went out. So hopefully that'll get going here shortly. And then on the OVS testing in CI, my recollection is that that's not quite in at this point. Is that correct, Laszlo?
Yeah, I will focus on this in the upcoming weeks, and it's ongoing too.
Okay, no, I appreciate that very much.
Okay.
Cool. And the one last thing I sort of wanted to bring up briefly on the agenda, and by the way, folks should feel free to add stuff if they have stuff. And this is an issue that was filed for 1.4, and this is sort of notable because it's the first use case that we have that leaves Kubernetes. And it's basically the use case of breaking up monolith services. A lot of folks who were building services 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and doing really smart things would essentially build a bunch of monolithic servers running services, and they would shard their customers across different servers. And if you want to break that up progressively by moving some of the services to Kubernetes bit by bit, you wind up with sort of this problem of like, how do these things talk to each other? And so in this case, Network Service Mesh offers a really nice solution because you can provide a very simple VL3 NSE that runs on the server as a Docker container. So not in Kubernetes at all, but then the pods from Kubernetes can connect to it. And having each pod associated to a single monolith, you can even simplify IPAM by having a single common IPAM prefix that's the same on all your monolith servers, because pods only ever talk to one monolith server at a time.
Yeah, I think this particular approach definitely matches some of the things that I'm trying to do in other systems as well. In terms of breaking up a monolith, that's certainly quite a difficult thing to do, especially when you consider that even when you pair these systems up together, the performance of moving from like, hey, this is a function call away, to this is a process away, or this is on another machine, can have quite a major effect on the system as well. And so these type of transitions from monolith to microservice environments, having them able to be broken out in ways like this, while having something like network service mesh cover the security aspect of like, are these two things allowed to communicate, is really valuable, especially when you can start to wire in additional observability into the wire to say like, here are the communication patterns, here are the type of things that we see go across, here's the latency that we see. And eventually, if they were to add tracers into the request as they progress through the system, then they can get full visibility using something like Jaeger. So there's a lot of really good patterns here that that can be called out. And it's probably something we should write about in the long run, to say like, here's a structured technique to take a monolith of services and to turn it into something that is more resilient. And also here are the side effects as well. Not every side effect is going to be positive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I just wanted to sort of call it to folks' attention, because so far all the use cases we've had are in Kubernetes, but there are actually interesting use cases that come from the fact that network service mesh is designed to work with things that are not just in Kubernetes. That gets to be very interesting.
Okay, so that brings us up to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else that people would like to discuss? Not currently hearing anything. So again, our agendas are open for people to add things to. Don't worry about, is this important enough or not? We can always prioritize the agenda before the meeting starts. And you can always tell us what your priority is with it as well. With that, I want to thank you all for your time, and we will see you all again at the same time next week. Have a great day.